In 1970, before most people in this room were born, and as I entered my second year of university studies, a book written by Alvin Toffler was published. In the book, Toffler predicted such diverse things as the internet, the drug Prozac, cloning, homeschooling, the self-induced paralysis of having too many choices, instant celebrities who would be swiftly fabricated and ruthlessly destroyed, and the end of blue-collar manufacturing to be replaced by what he called knowledge workers. The title of the book was Future Shock. At the time, I thought Future Shock was an unexpected assignment that one of my professors had handed me without notice. Toffler defined future shock as the shattering stress and disorientation that we induce in individuals by subjecting them to too much change in too short a time. Like it or not, future shock is upon us now. In fact, it's far worse than it ever was in Toffler's time. Two other points that Toffler made that are worthy of note today are that technology feeds on itself. Technology makes more technology possible. The IT people here know better than anyone else that lovely state-of-the-art laptop that you have in front of you was actually obsolete before you bought it. It's the same in almost every field of science and engineering, and there are huge implications to each of us, but we'll talk about that later. His second statement, which concerns each of you even more personally, was, "The illiterate of the future will not be the person who cannot read. It will be the person who does not know how to learn." The single biggest challenge you are going to face in your lifetime will be the massive economic crisis that is coming. The models used by banks and governments will not foresee this catastrophe. Those models rely on notions of efficient markets, normally distributed risk, continuous liquidity, and a future that resembles the past. None of those factors match current reality. It's a huge topic which mainline bankers, economists, and governments are trying to ignore. But if there is one thing that is of absolute certainty, it is this: when the world's economy collapses, it will be far more catastrophic than anything that has happened before in our history. Let me see if I can briefly summarize the way this will happen. The world's economy is a house of cards that is built on debt. It's very easily collapsed by very, very small calamities. Every time the world's economy looks like faltering, everyone is encouraged to borrow more and stimulate economies by using what is called quantitative easing and helicopter finance. These are more commonly known as low interest rates and government stimulus packages, respectively. Household debt in my country, Australia, is nearly $80,000 per person. Yes, that's for every man, woman, and child. Business and government debt is also at an all-time high, and it's not just in Australia, it's the same around the world. Most governments currently borrow to pay their interest, and the reason they do that is because they cannot raise enough money through taxation to pay their debt. Simply put, regardless of who or what you are, you can't simply keep borrowing without reducing the original principal sum that you borrowed. Sooner or later, debt has to be paid back to the lender. But these debts are now so large that any economic downturn will mean the debts incurred simply cannot be paid. When the defaulting debtors become large enough, like a major bank or a government, what will follow will be a domino effect that will affect everyone. And it will eventually drag the world into economic disaster. There are many signs out there that indicate that this catastrophe is imminent. As you would say, et abeds vi scora predet. If you thought getting employment is difficult now, believe me, it will be much, much worse in years to come. We'll briefly address the reasons for this trend next, but it's vitally important for you to realise how difficult it is going to be. That is not to say that you should lose heart or become despondent about your prospects. There are ways to improve your chances of getting employment and keeping it. That comes later. Remember, Toffler predicted the demise of blue-collar workers. What he didn't say in his book was that technological advancement would dramatically affect white-collar workers too. British Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli once said, "There are three kinds of lies: lies, damned lies, and statistics." If you listen to government pronouncements around the world, everything is on the rise. Economies are strong and growing. Everything is great. More people are employed than ever before. Really? It's not rocket science to understand that negative growth and negative interest rates are not indications of strong economies. But there are many ways to make false words become the truth. In my country, for instance, the government considers workers, for statistical purposes of course, to be employed if you work just 1 hour each week. 1 hour! That's hardly gainful employment. For the average worker in Australia, that will pay for his family to sit down to a single meal. And all the while, we see increasing poverty and more people living on the streets than ever before. Keep in mind that no politician will tell you that he has led his country into economic disaster. Instead, we get lies, damned lies, and statistics. One of the most dramatic trends in industry worldwide is a move to smaller or part-time employment. It's not hard to see because this trend is so widespread, not confined to a few countries or a few industries. So while more people may be working, the real question that needs to be asked is how many hours are they working? The simple answer is not enough. Most jobs advertised in the Western world provide part-time hours, and many are for 10 hours work or less. By decreasing the number of employees and/or the number of hours each works, industry is lowering one of its biggest costs: employment and employee-related payments. This is about increasing profit. Other than increased profits, one of the main reasons for a need for smaller and part-time workforces is developing technology. Many years ago, a boss had a stenographer. The stenographer was his secretary who took shorthand. She then transferred those shorthand codes into letters, memos, and notes. Then recording devices came on the scene, and it was not necessary to employ a stenographer, but just a typist who was much cheaper. Then advanced word processing appeared, and voice-activated technology after that, which made even typists redundant. Computerization is doing similar things in most, if not all, areas of business, from administration to architecture to art. Automation and robotics is dramatically changing industry too. Driverless vehicles are part of the immediate future and are already working on locations like mines. Manufacturing robotics is already a reality and has been for years. Artificial intelligence is set to change things even more. Workplaces are changing, and that means two things: higher profits and smaller workforces. Okay, all this must sound like doom and gloom, bad news and nothing but bad news. But I'm not known to be a prophet of doom, so let me outline the implications for you, and then I'll put a practical spin on the entire thing for you. If you hadn't worked out for yourself already, the first and most important implication is that there will be less job opportunities. Yes, that was obvious, wasn't it? But there's no getting past this simple fact. Lowering economic standards, major problems with the world economy, and all that adds up to less job opportunities for you. My second point is less important unless you're looking to work outside your home country. International work experience is becoming an increasingly valued part of your CV. Employers are looking for it, but it's going to become increasingly difficult to get. That's not to say there will be no opportunities, just less of them. And it should be increasingly clear to you now that the collapsing world economy will decrease the desirability for international exchange because it's expensive to implement. But companies will still desire employees with such expertise. Which brings me to the two most important things I want to share with you today: how to be prepared for these changes. But before I go there, let me explain something that is vitally important for you to understand. There are three groups of people in this room. Most of you will fall into the first category. These people will basically ignore my advice. They will hear it today, and if they're convinced, they'll do something about it, or at least tell themselves that they should. But human nature is consistent, regardless of the culture it's found in. Many will procrastinate, which is just another word for finding an excuse for doing nothing. And they will eventually forget about it. The second group will be those who will start the process and not complete it. The smallest group are those few, and I hope it's most of you, who will take this advice and make appropriate alterations in their lives to make a difference where it matters. I can point you in the right direction, but only you can determine which of these groups will include you. The best way to be prepared for what is coming is to stay out of debt. This really is possible if you try, unless of course you want to buy a major asset like a home. Okay, you're going to need a loan for that, and you're going to need to go into debt. If you're already in debt, work as hard as you can to get out of debt as fast as you can. Make larger payments, and make payments more often if you can. It's also a good move to own the right assets. Do you really need that new car? Cars are depreciating assets, so they will almost always be poor investments. Which begs the question, what is a good asset? At the moment, bullion, gold, and silver. Wait, I hear you say, I can't afford to buy gold? Then buy poor man's gold, silver. At the current price of silver, anyone can afford it. And when the crash comes, it will go up in value at a rate you simply will not believe. Potentially, and far more importantly, bullion is cash in times of economic crisis. Next, learn how to learn. Remember Toffler's words? The illiterate of the future will not be the person who cannot read. It will be the person who does not know how to learn. Learn is a 5-letter word with massive applications and implications. It's not confined to formal education, to school or university. It's vitally important for you to consider every experience, every conversation as a learning experience. Learn from your mistakes. Better. Learn from those others have made before you so you don't make the same mistakes again. Be a student of history and learn from that too. Question everything, especially the things told to you by politicians, who will never tell you the truth unless it suits their motives. Learn to ask questions like, what's in it for them? And learn from the answers you discover. Be the best you can be. Never settle for mediocre when you can be better. Never make excuses for failure. Accept it, learn from it, and become better. This will stand you in good stead when you're looking for a job, especially when the PR people start talking to people who know you and know you well. Learn to do that little bit extra with every single task you're assigned. And don't be afraid to stand out from the crowd. Have a professional CV. It's another vital tool that's often overlooked. Ask successful people to let you look at their CV. Learn from them. Copy their style. Develop a strong CV that reflects you as a person. In your CV, it's important that you list your achievements and your experience. When I say this to most people, the common response that I get is, I'm a student. I haven't got any experience or achievements to list. Nonsense. Everyone has achievements to list. What about that study group you helped establish? List the improvements in the members' grades since you got the group working together. It demonstrates responsibility. Are you working part-time to help your bank balance while you're studying? Great. List that too, because it shows initiative. List the time when your teacher asked you to lead a group. You were showing evidence of leadership potential. You see, we all have achievements. And don't be humble. This is the time on your CV when you should boast, but do it carefully. Employers are not looking for someone who hasn't achieved anything. They're looking for people who have been successful. So tell them what you've done, and what you've achieved, and how you've made a difference. If you can't think of anything, ask others what you've done. They know. If it's going to be difficult to get international experience later, get it now. This is less obvious to most people than it should be. Once it's on your CV, it's permanent. So if necessary, get an overseas job, even if it only improves your language skills, and take a year off to make it happen. What will this look like on your CV? Simple. Took a year's sabbatical to work overseas to improve my English language skills. Now that looks good, doesn't it? And get the best education you can possibly achieve. I can't stress this enough. The better education you have, the bigger advantage you will have over all the other candidates who are looking for that same job that you want. This might mean getting a higher degree, or moving to another university when you do your higher degree. And you can start right now by achieving at a higher level than that at which you are currently performing. I remember my undergraduate years when I discovered this fact. Okay, I had less social life than others, but I got the best grades of all my colleagues, plus better job offers and opportunities, because I simply put my head down and my tail up, and I achieved. At the end of my university studies, 4 years just didn't seem so long after all. Lastly, become fluent in English. One of the keys to success in this changing world is good, workable English. If you doubt this, look at the English language programs in nearly every school system in the world, and ask yourself why these programs exist when they are so expensive and so difficult to implement. The answer is simple. English is vitally important to the future of this world and to your chances of success. As with any skill, there is only one way to improve, and that's to use the skill as much as you possibly can. Take every opportunity to listen to and use English. Yes, I know it can be mentally tiring, but persevere and you will get results. You will only improve with practice, and practice often. One of the best methods to practice is to speak often with native speakers. This is not always possible where you are, but do it whenever you can. Perhaps your boss is a native speaker, perhaps a neighbour or another student. Ask if they can give you 10 minutes a day. It doesn't take a lot to do some practice. If you meet foreign visitors while you're sitting at a cafe, ask them if they would just spend a few minutes with you talking. It's possible you might be lucky and make a friend, but I can guarantee you'll get some practice. Another way to practice is just to listen to English. You don't need to sit and concentrate on what's being said, though it does help if you do. Just having English in the background means that your ears are becoming familiar with the sounds and the way those sounds are combined, which is quite different to your native languages. There are many ways to do this, like BBC on TV or radio, music, talking books, movies, and so on. It's not expensive, but it's extremely helpful. Take opportunities to listen to native speakers and then emulate what you hear. It's even better if you record yourself and then compare with what you listen to. Make sure you correct yourself and keep practicing until you sound like the person you're trying to copy. Lastly, do not be afraid of making mistakes. Mistakes are as common as people themselves. We all make them, and yes, they can be embarrassing. But keep in mind that mistakes are opportunities to learn. I said earlier that you need to learn how to learn, and mistakes are the most common learning tool in the world. Our world is changing, and it's changing rapidly. I'm not talking here about climate change or political change or the borders that surround our nations. Believe me, change is the only constant in the universe. The ongoing challenge for you, individually and as a nation, will be how you manage that change, both now and into the future. How you manage that change personally will determine your individual level of success.